accept it until the 13th?
Yes.
Mark, I'd like to also submit a letter, but also read my comments.
Okay, yeah, and so feel free to do that, please, just after you get done reading, please bring it forward, we'll stamp it and file it as well. So, and we'll announce it again later, but as Mr. Katz asked, written comments will continue to be received until Tuesday, March 13th, close of business day. So to this point, with those two, we've received 12 written comments since February 21st. All would appear to be opposed in some form or another to the guidelines. I did receive one yesterday with the caveat that asked that they couldn't be here today, so they would like it to be read into record. So I will read on behalf of this constituent at this time. No? You don't read the written comment into record? Okay, I can do that too. All right, I will wait until the opponent portion of it though. Okay, so with no further written comments, we will now call for proponents to the proposed signature gathering process.
Before you do that, can I ask when we can expect a vote on this issue?
Those in favor of
Proponents?
proponents,
Okay.
those in favor of.
You want to start first? I'll start. Okay.
Okay,
No, wait, these proponents. Proponents.
Right, left.
with hearing no proponents, we'll move on to kick off with reading this letter from Dan Burkhart, dated March. Dear Commissioners, I think there is a lesson from our own county's history that applies to the current zoning petition, citizen-initiated zoning district. More than 100 years ago, a zoning effort was defeated by one county commission and then failed in the state legislature 3 times. But finally, the will of the people prevailed. They gazed on the Beartooth, underlined implying a book. The history of our area, written by Jim Annan and Isabel Johnson, describes the hard work done to create Stillwater County. Jim's father, State Senator J.B. Annan, a Republican like yourselves, was the chief proponent. Ultimately, a referendum measure passed into law which would permit residents within an area to vote their desires. Our county history states. It's what allowed Stillwater County to be created. The majority of residents within an area voted their desires. Carved from Sweetgrass, Carbon, and Yellowstone counties, the matter of the creation of a new commonwealth was left to the people residing within its confines. Make no mistake, it was a zoning district. It was controversial. None of the 3 counties, Carbon, Sweetgrass, and Yellowstone, which would lose some land to create our county, was happy about it. It was a Republican-driven measure. The first idea for a county name, in fact, was to honor the leading Republican of the time, Teddy Roosevelt. Later, it was decided to name it Stillwater. A second zoning district, not to create a county, but to ensure residents living near Stillwater Mine would see it developed in a safe and reasonable way, was created in the 1970s. It was controversial too, but opposition was overcome by reason. The county commissioners approved it. If anything, it strengthened the working relationship between the mine and residents. I believe it helped inspire the good neighbor agreement that has worked so well for some 30 years. That zoning district was principally the work of Mary Donahoe, a Republican and a former Stillwater County Commissioner. History shows Republicans in Stillwater County had high regard for citizen involvement in government throughout our past. They believed, as the U.S. Constitution stated, the right to petition guaranteed in the First Amendment was fundamental as a means of protecting public participation in government. Those of us wanting I think he meant a CIZ, but a CZID, to ensure responsible development of oil and gas are hardly forming a new county, but we are expecting the same right to say what we want where we live. More was required of us than those who created the county, as a 60% residing within the proposed district had to approve, not just 50%. And when the county was created, the approval of the residents was needed, not the approval of mineral rights owners. It was a political issue only in that a majority interest prevailed. If zoning had not happened over 100 years ago here, we wouldn't be here today. You, the commissioners, wouldn't be here today. But we are, and I think it's a good idea. Keep alive the idea that allows residents within an area to vote their desires. You are all Republicans on this commission, and I would hope you keep faith with your Republican predecessors. Reconsider your decision accepting the threshold of 60% of residents who signed the petition, and let's move on to creating zoning district and appointing a zoning commission. Sincerely, Dan Burkhart, Fishtail, Montana. So with that being said, as you, let's do this in an orderly fashion, please. For those that have something to say, please step to the front so we can address the commission as well as those in attendance. If someone can't hear, we will pass over the microphone and have you speak over the PA so that all can hear what is being said. So at this time, I guess let's just start here in the front row and go back, or do you guys have an order already determined of how? So
I'd rather wait.
you rather wait, okay?
I can go.
Joan, okay? And please state your name before you read so that we know for the record who is speaking. Thank you.
My name is Joan Brownell. I live in Fishtail. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. When I first heard that the new guidelines for Part 1 zoning had been developed, I was first disappointed that the commissioners had not thought of calling some of us in southern Stillwater County, who they know had just finished several years of collecting signatures. A workshop or discussion might have helped with devising new guidelines that are realistic and practical for a rural agricultural community like southern Stillwater County. I will not speak today about the mineral rights interest question since it is presently under litigation, except I feel that it ignores the rights of surface landowners who pay taxes and work and recreate in Stillwater County, and it would be an impossible task. I will speak about the process of collecting signatures in the light of these proposed guidelines and just provide a few examples from experience. To collect some signatures, it was often necessary to visit individuals several times. Many people could not sign their names, well, do not sign their names as shown on the deed without a middle name or a full name, full first name. Even after requesting this several times, they still don't sign it correctly, even when you're standing over them, because it's a natural signature, and then to try to force them to sign the signature another way is fairly uncomfortable to do. And this, of course, is more of a problem when they live outside of Stillwater County. The problems with the cadastral and the GIS are known to the commissioner, as they are often not current and also problematic. The guidelines state that the clerk and recorder's information should be the only verifiable recorder. Therefore, it seems prudent for all involved that the county should make available to the petitioners a list of the accurate property owners so everyone would start on the same page. Otherwise, in reverse, another suggestion would be that the petitioners provide the clerk and recorder with a list of affected property owners, and she verifies this list before the petitioners collect the signatures. One last thing I need to mention is about notary publics. I do not believe that you can restrict a certified notary public for doing his or her job. They, full disclosure, I am a notary, hold an official capacity with the state and hold this office with honesty and integrity. It must be emphasized again that in a rural county like Stillwater, having a notary who is available to go to homes of people who otherwise can't get to the notary or makes it's difficult for them to do, makes the process more doable. There are other questions about the required steps that I will address in a formal letter. However, the commissioners seem to have lost track that these efforts are generated by your constituents, as in citizen initiated. It is generally a volunteer effort that takes lots of time and energy. To put such roadblocks in some of these new guidelines just seems that you are not listening to the people of Stillwater County, and I hope you will consider all comments and revise the guidelines to help, not hinder, any efforts towards a Part 1 Citizen Initiative zoning district. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I have to retype this.
My name is Bill Hand, and I'm from Nye, Montana. I've written a document for you. Let me begin. The document presented at the hearing is an attempt to subvert a long-established process for CIZ district formations followed in over 100 instances in other parts of the state. Clearly, the authors of this document have absolutely no desire to see a Part 1 zone formed within the county. Further, they are in no way desirous to provide assistance and to provide some kind of guidance. What is presented in a definite attempt to rewrite state law, statutes, with burdensome, very expensive rules and regulations. The process presented is extremely expensive and burdensome to any group wishing to undertake the protection of private and public lands, our private lands. Above all, what is presented greatly favors outside interests. We're very concerned about outside interests having an impact on this county commissioners and on our county attorney. There's a clear attempt by the Stillwater County Commissioners to impede, if not outright block, formation of any kind of effort of a Part 1 citizens-initiated zone. Abnormally expensive procedures are outlined in the proposed county regulations. Regulations as proposed, contrary to what is known about every other CIZ formed in the state over the past 50 years. Major deviances from the state legislation and rules and regulations now in place covering formation of a Part 1 zone. What you're doing is you're proposing something that is totally new. Clearly an attempt to rewrite, like I said, rewrite state laws. And finally, this is a blatant inconsistency regarding treatment of surface holders' rights and rights of subsurface holders. In essence, you're over-favoring subsurface owners. Let me just speak a little bit to the subsurface owner in mineral rights. My family, I come from a ranching family in southeastern Montana. We had put together a very large ranch. My father homesteaded in 1910. He started out with about a section of land, worked hard, eventually got that up to quite a few sections. What happened was that he turned it over eventually to his son. What we had gotten out of that, would Grandpa always remembered the importance of mineral rights, okay? And that ranch was eventually sold in 2000, but about 10,000 acres of those mineral rights stayed with the family. I want to just, for you to understand, and attorney, I wish you would listen to this too, please, the importance of what you're doing with regard to mineral rights. The fracturing of mineral rights, there's no value in mineral rights. It's like giving your kids lottery tickets, okay? That's about what it is when you pass along mineral rights. They're lottery tickets to some possible future income. For our family, when that ranch was sold in 1990, it was sold to two people. But on those 10,000 acres, Grandpa kept it. He gave half to his son and the other half to his three daughters. What happened then was those rights, eventually half of them went to the Range Riders Museum. Each of those daughters had children. Those were divided up further. And so now I own 1/24 of some 10,000 acres in Montana in mineral rights. I don't know what it's worth, but the point is, what you're asking to do is you're not having rights to the minerals. And that's just not right. And you gotta rethink what you're trying to propose here. when it comes to mineral rights. And I don't think you have much idea of the impact that you're talking about. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to give my comments.
Bert Williams, I'm from Fishtail, Montana, and I'll submit some written comments separately. I think I'm all for a reasonable, acceptable set of procedures in order to help citizens realize their own fate on the lands that they control and have to live on. When I read this, I look at it as nearly everything in this proposal is designed to be prohibitively expensive or practically difficult to impossible to accomplish. And that's just to gauge interest in working on a zone. The process is a three-part process, and I ask you to find 60% of the citizens that are available, that are in favor of doing a zone. And that is just to give the commissioners a feeling for how much support there is for something like this in the county. Other than that, the commissioners and the county still has total control over this process. They get to hold a hearing and make the decision of whether such a proposal is in the public interest or convenience. And they control, and then the third step is to set up a zoning and planning and zoning commission. And they control 5 of 7 of the positions in that body, and so they still will be the ones who do nearly all of the guidance as to how the zone is put together and implemented in the county. So to put the kinds of restrictions and impediments in the way of the public to just get this thing rolling seems to me to be totally unfair. So so there's a lot of examples in this, and I'll only mention a couple, 3. It's impossible, if not prohibitive, to try to find all of the mineral rights holders. We did some checking with lands people, and they think somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 to $3.50 an acre in order to do this kind of work, to even try to find everybody. So for a zone the size of what we're proposing, that's $250,000 in order just to find the mineral rights, let alone all of the other requirements. It's extremely expensive, and unnecessary provisions put into this for mapping and surveying a zone. Today we've got landlines out in the ether with GIS, and you can pinpoint that stuff without having a land surveyor go on and try to find every line and every foot of every line on the landscape. And then I think that it's an invasion of privacy to try to impose the very restrictive signature provisions that you have for entities that control pieces of land. By entities, I mean corporations, partnerships, trusts, all those ones where there's a number of people in control. Most of these people set these things up as private entities, and there is no reason to expose every single one of their names in a public document in order to find the person that has the authority to make the decisions on that. So those are just 3 examples, but as I read through this, it just piece after piece falls out as a sort of impossible thing. So I'd urge the commissioners to rescind this and to sit down with a group of the public and work cooperatively to try to figure out something that would help us control our own fate along the Beartooth Front. It's a beautiful place. There's a lot of people live there for various different reasons, everybody from ranchers and agriculturalists to people who come for vacation opportunities and recreation. And I think there's a way to make a set of provisions that will preserve that where, and at the same time develop minerals, and that's what in the zoning request that we have that's in legal proceedings now, that's what our intent was, to do that, and I think that's a very possible way to put one of these together. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bert.
Morning, my name is Charles Steinmeister. I live in Lyon, Montana. Thank you, commissioners, for having this meeting. I appreciate it. As a little bit of history before I get into my comments, I was one of a group of people and others in this area. Yeah, I do. I was one of the people in the area who came to commissioners about 3 years ago, and in full transparency,
It's on.
and in full transparency, wanted to let the commissioners know what we're going to do, so that we would not have an adversarial relationship, and we would not end up in a meeting such as this. I've been at other hearings, and for our law enforcement, I want to tell you, I'm the guy on the road who waves to you in recognition of the service you provide, and I wave with all 5 fingers. So thank you there, and thank you for being here today, too. So, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. This is the preamble of the Constitution of the United States of America. That government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. This is the words used by President Abraham Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address. We, the people of Montana, grateful to God for the quiet beauty of our state, the grandeur of our mountains, the vastness of our rolling plains, and desiring to improve the quality of life, equality of opportunity, and to secure the blessings and liberty for this and future generations, do ordain and establish this Constitution. This is a preamble for the Montana State Constitution. On issues concerning the courthouse, the hospital, tree removal, the Stillwater River road closure, and now the citizen-initiated zoning district, you, the Stillwater County Commissioners, Clerk and Recorder, and Attorney have crassly decided to erase the people from your considerations and decisions and replace it with roadblocks to our participation. I'm a citizen, a voter, a property owner, a taxpayer, election officer, veteran, business owner, member of the Chambers of Commerce, and a constituent of yours. My name is Charles Sangmeister, and I stand with the people in this room commenting to you. I'm not an unknown whoever. I've been in many adversarial relationships as a union representative for 40 years, but never have I seen such an overt effort to wipe the people out of having a voice and being able to pursue, to interact with our government for the betterment of their land. Your citizen dissing policy ensures that we can't interact with you in a way that our forefathers intended and a way that we intended when we started 3 years ago. Your proposed policy does not enable we, the people in this room, but instead ensures they never have a voice in your government. It makes one wonder, do you only listen to yourselves, or is there another voice that you are beholden to that has nothing to do with we, the people? Please scrap this policy and rewrite it with guidelines that can be implemented. Enough with the roadblocks already. Sincerely and transparency, and with liberty and justice for all, Charles Sangmeister. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. I'm Lana Sangmeister, and I'm here to talk to my commissioners and Ms. Rhodey, our county attorney. And I start out with, although I should not be, I am surprised that you want to create policies that prohibit citizen involvement. As you should know, the Montana Constitution states the public has the right to expect governmental agencies to afford reasonable, underlying, opportunities for citizen participation. The formation of the Citizen-Initiated Zoning District Part 1 zoning document that you have drafted and proposed at almost every step only outlines ways to ensure that local citizens, your constituents, cannot participate. As written, there's no way citizens could ever reach the end game of being able to petition you to implement a citizen-initiated zoning district petition. It puts one unsurmountable roadblock after another in place. I can only conclude that you intend never to be bothered again by constituents wanting to have a say in how their land is used. And I'm sorry I'm emotional about this, but I am. I am passionate about the land my family has acquired. We've strived to protect and improve it for ourselves and for our future generations. We want to leave it better than we found it. But it clearly is not something that you would encourage us to do, or even reluctantly aid us in doing. I have spent thousands of hours over the last 4 years working on the state's ZID Part 1 statute. We've sought to partner with you in trying to implement it, and we've pleaded with you for direction. You consistently resisted us. When I heard you were finally drafting rules to aid your constituents in trying to implement a Part 1 CIZD petition in the future, I thought, at last. But instead of making guidelines to aid the process, you have drafted a document impossible for any citizen group to ever follow. Your draft document puts guidelines in place that far exceed what the state requires. The county even can't follow them. You have guidelines that attempt to supersede existing state law and procedures. For example, your notary public requirements. At the end of that section, you refer a citizen user of your document to the Montana Notary Handbook. Well, I encourage you to refer to it. Your statements in this section circumvent and overreach existing state notary law, and I believe them to be illegal. I don't intend to take your document step by step and point out its many flaws, but I will address one other area, that being associated cost requirements embedded in the document. Your constituents are mostly totally rural residents with limited means. With the size of the petition we currently have before you, we would have had to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring our petition to you. And at least one of the expensive requirements would also have to be paid out by you if you intend to follow your own guidelines as proposed. Since you would be using taxpayer dollars in doing so, I guess we, your constituents, are expected to pay twice. You demonstrate with this document a total disregard for us as your neighbors and as your constituents. You work hard in this document to make sure you have shut us down in our current effort, and then you certainly will succeed in shutting down any citizens in the future. I ask, why would it be so awful to work with your constituents? Why are you so willing to work against us, but not with us? When, why, and how did we become the enemy? It is truly not a document that serves your constituents and yourselves. It will not sit down. Why not sit down with us and seek to understand how best to outline workable steps together? In summary, your policy impedes citizen participation. It's too expensive. It totally departs from the intention and precedence of this statute. It attempts to rewrite state law, and it's a blatant mistreatment of surface owners. Thank you.
I was gonna, but I can't. My name is Bill Peterson. I'm from Nye. My wife and I have lived in Nye for 10 years. She's a nurse. I'm a retired Navy nurse officer, 20 years in the Navy. I presently do drafting work from my home in Nye. Okay. I thought it was interesting this morning that there are no proponents. And I'm wondering, why is this so difficult? It's not asking for impossible things. It's asking to do the right thing and the easy thing to do, okay? Already has been mentioned about the Montana State Constitution, and I guess one of the main things that disturbs me most is I understand dysfunction on a national level, Washington DC, maybe in Helena. But on a county level, the dysfunction and the shirking of responsibilities is just almost too much to bear. You county commissioners do not represent the people. I don't know how maybe it's oil and gas people, I don't know if it's individual companies influencing you, but you certainly have not represented the people of this county. You resist at every turn. I think it's shameful.
Is on next? My name is Noel Keough. I operate the family cattle ranch at Nye. And thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to come down and talk with you. I was a little bit late, so I didn't quite catch what Maureen's reason is for not being here, but I'm kind of disappointed she's not. I had some questions for her, but I have questions for both of you guys as commissioners, as landowners. You just bought a place to park. Do you know all of the mineral rights holders of your place?
I have never looked, but.
Dennis, you've been around here a long time.
Mr. Keough,
You own some land.
for this public hearing, we're not gonna do question and answer, we're just gonna do comments for the record.
All right.
So, thank you.
That's honest, but so I would encourage you to find out, if you don't know, who has the mineral rights on your property. It came as a big shock to me that there's a lot of mineral rights on our property that we don't own. And it would literally cost us, expected to cost us about $3,000 to find out who those mineral rights owners are. So, while there's more to this discussion than just mineral rights, I think that's kind of the basic root of what everything is boiling here about. And mineral rights ownership to private properties. The interesting thing is most of the property in this county that was homesteaded after around 1916 or 1918, I believe, the mineral rights were severed by the federal government at that time, and their property of the Department of Interior. So they're the big mineral rights holder, and to get the Department of Interior to sign off on some of these petition zoning things, I think is going to be an interesting case in itself. But so I would encourage everybody to figure out who their mineral rights owners are, but are they taxpayers? Are they taxpayers in Stillwater County? I mean, if this is what you're requiring, we should be able to go into the courthouse and say, this piece of ground right here, who's the mineral rights owner? And that should be, we do it with surface right ownership. They're on the rolls, they have an address, they have a phone number, everything you need to contact them to see if they've got a weed problem, any other thing we do. So as the fact that they're not taxpayers in Stillwater County, and mostly unbeknownst to the surface right owners and everybody else, I'd say this is kind of a farce, but thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's okay. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name's Bill Muldoon. I live in Billings, Montana. It's my primary residence. But we've owned recreational property here in Stillwater County since 2005. We're currently building a very nice custom home on the West Rosebud, about 7 miles west of Fishtail. And we love it here. About 10 days ago, I wrote an email. It was a letter email to the county commissioners, and it was just a general support for the Beartooth Front petitioners. At that time, I didn't know that the commissioners had guidelines that were out for public comment, and so since I found that out, I've decided to write another letter specific to those guidelines, and that's what I'll read right here. Okay. Thank you for drafting the proposed guidelines for formation of a citizens-initiated zoning district, Part 1 zoning, and holding this public meeting to gather comment. Unfortunately, considering the lawsuit filed last week by the Beartooth Front Coalition, which directly affects the future content of the proposed guidelines, having this public meeting appears to be premature. Nevertheless, at this point in time, here are my comments on the current proposed guidelines, which most likely will be different after the lawsuit is settled. In the big picture, we can all agree that Stillwater County is one of the most naturally beautiful places to live in Montana, with all the abundant mountains, rivers, ranches, and wildlife. Stillwater County has also been blessed with many natural resources, including hydroelectric potential, minerals, coal, oil, and gas. The people who live here have the right and obligation to protect the area's natural beauty, and the people with mineral rights have the right to responsibly develop the resources. It's possible to do both, but not with proposed CIZ guidelines as written. It is a fact that unchecked, aggressive oil and gas development can have a long-lasting, irreversible detrimental impacts to the environment, such as water, soil, air, noise, light pollution, increased traffic, road deterioration, decreased biodiversity, and landscape changes, among other things. Many oil and gas companies are very aware that they must earn the right to operate in a community and take numerous precautions to minimize their impact. Unfortunately, there are other oil and gas companies that are driven only to maximize profit. They do not have robust environmental management systems, and they're not willing to work with the communities where they operate. A well-written, citizen-initiated zoning guidance document and subsequent stakeholder agreements can ensure that all future oil and gas development will be conducted in a reasonable and responsible manner by allowing the affected surface property owners to have influence over how the oil and gas companies operate. As written, the proposed CIZ guideline document will not allow the affected surface owners to have this influence because it includes the requirement to obtain 60% of the mineral rights owners in the petition. That's in step 5 of the section of highly recommended first steps. No other CIZ petition in the state has been required to include mineral rights owners. This requirement is basically impossible to complete and ensures a satisfactory petition with the required signatures will never be obtained. It is impossible for the petitioners to satisfy this requirement due to its complexity, and impossible for the county to validate it without unlimited resources. There is no readily available database that lists all the mineral rights owners in the county. Mineral rights are often severed from the surface owner and subsequently divided into fractions among potentially hundreds, possibly thousands of individuals who may or may not live in the area. The cost to manually develop mineral rights ownership in the area from the county clerk and recorder's office by a professional landman and to have the county validate it would be prohibitive for any individual, organization, or governmental entity. This proposed requirement is not reasonable. In addition, surface rights owners and mineral rights owners often have conflicting priorities. The intent of the CIZ Administrative Rules of Montana are to protect the interests of the people who live in the area of development and who will be negatively impacted by the activity, not to protect the interests of the mineral rights owners who may or may not live in the area. The interests of the mineral rights owners and the oil and gas companies can be addressed through other legal means, and the current lawsuit by the Beartooth Front Coalition will attempt to address this issue. There are other concerns with the proposed guidelines, such as any individual with a fraction of a mineral interest would have an equal standing with one surface owner who may own thousands of acres. This counting approach is not equitable and should be revisited. In conclusion, providing comments on this document is premature due to the pending lawsuit by the Beartooth Front Coalition. And as written, the proposed guidelines contain some serious flaws, such as including mineral rights owners in a petition. I hope the county commissioners listen to over 60% of the surface owners in the area who have already signed the petition and also consider my comments. I look forward to providing additional comment on a revised draft of the CIC guidelines in the future. Thank you. You know, I'm going to submit the letter I gave 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure whether it's necessary, but yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Kathleen Ralph. I live in Columbus, and so I'm not directly impacted by the proposed district, but I would be impacted by the proposed guidelines. And I would urge you to start all over again And I would reiterate all the other comments and criticisms of the guidelines, especially the main one, which is mineral rights. The mineral rights it's far too burdensome for any group. It's very, I know that from experience, there's no guarantee even when you think you have all the mineral rights owners. And so I would urge you to start all over again and work with people, work with the citizens rather than working against them. And lastly, I have a rhetorical question, and that is, they've been working almost 3 to 4 years on this zoning district. And when did you start the writing guidelines for the petition? I mean, it seems to me you started way too late, and throwing this curve at them at this point seems extremely unhelpful.
Thank you for holding this meeting so that we can voice our opinions. My name's Virginia Cross, and unlike probably the majority of people in this room, I'm not a landowner. I am a citizen and a voter, and I'm an employee of Susan Heineman at Bench Ranch, and I've been there for 6 years now. And I followed the work that has been involved in creating this CIZ over the last few years. It's been grueling, impressive, heartwarming, depressing, and now, after trying to fall in with all of your requirements over the years, you come in with these guidelines. It's a slap in the face. It's a real slap in the face. And as I say, I'm not a landowner in Stillwater County, but I think that you are not representing us. We are residents here. We love this land, and this is not helping us. And you are not representing us. You're failing us. And I don't have it all written down, but this is heartfelt from me, and I want you to know that. And I'll be writing something and submitting it next week. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dot Gallagher, and like Kathleen, I am not in the area that this concern is about, but I will tell you that when I first moved here, I decided to look into the ownership and mineral rights because I was very concerned about oil and gas development, particularly the fracking practices, etc. And when I looked into the oil and gas development, the property rights, or the mineral rights owners on our property, I found that there were 60 to 80 mineral rights on our 300 acres. And at that point in time, I decided it would be impossible for me to individually identify who all those mineral rights owners were. I went to the county offices and I inquired about how I would find out that information, and they told me there was no way that they could find out all of those people without a considerable input in finances on my part. Therefore, I think, even as a citizen who is not directly involved in that, that is an unacceptable requirement that you put on the people who are trying to develop this citizen-instituted zoning requirement. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Lorash. I'm a land manager in the heart of this initiative. Want to touch on what Dot said. We did the mineral analysis on our place. I managed the 4K ranch for a couple out in New York. We have 72 owners in 357 acres. That costed $3,000 to do it. We have people that own 5 2,034ths of an interest. It is on the verge of ridiculous. So I think really what's happening is you are taking some of our citizens' rights away. For most people, it would be out of the reach to find out that report. And so I ask you guys really to reconsider what this initiative is really about. Thank you.
I'm David Katz, and my family's owned property on the Stillwater at Beehive for the last 45 years. And before I start, I'd like to ask each of the commissioners to stay off their phone until...
I'll run the timer.
When I was in high school civics, I recall a lesson about what makes good public policy. And there were 3 things. And the first was that there are clearly articulated standards, that the words are defined, that people know what it means. The second is that there are clear action steps that tell you in order what it is that you need to do. And the third, that there are consequences for not following the policy. And what I learned, and it's not rocket science, is when you have good public policy, then things can happen. People know what to do. If there are conflicts, the policy tells you how to resolve them, and that's what makes good public policy. When you don't have those things, then you don't get things done. You have conflicts, and when you have conflicts, they need to be adjudicated elsewhere, like in courtrooms. That's what we've got here. You don't have clear standards. You don't have a clear map for what it is that people should do, and there aren't consequences for people not following along. And so what I'd like to do is go through this policy and say, okay, from a landowner's point of view, what would happen if you actually tried to follow this policy? So what I do is begin at number 5 under highly recommended first steps. And there it says, develop a list of affected property owners. This list will include all real property owners within the district who are eligible to sign a zoning petition and the legal description of property. And then in parentheses, mineral mining right owners are required when subsurface rights may be at risk. So I'm confused by this right off the bat. On January 23rd, the county attorney wrote a letter to the county clerk and recorder and said mineral rights must be included. And then the clerk and recorder wrote a letter to the commissioners saying mineral rights must be included. And the commissioners adopted that 3-0. Now you're saying that mineral rights don't have to be included. They have to be included only when subsurface rights may be at risk. So when subsurface rights may be at risk, mineral rights have to be included. When subsurface rights are not at risk, mineral rights don't have to be included. Well, who decides that? Who decides when subsurface rights are at risk? Do you? Do I? Don't know. So we're going to wind up in court right from the get-go if we try to implement this policy. And then the next thing is under required steps. Final list of real property owners must be obtained via an ownership report from a title company for all legal descriptions. Now, Mark, you said you went out to other counties, you went to their websites. This is what they have on their websites, that you have to get a list of property owners from a title company. Well, they're not looking for mineral owners. The fact is, did you talk to Stillwater Abstract? Because they don't do this. So here we are, a bunch of landowners, we feel passionate about something. We're going out to establish a Part 1 zone. We go over to Stillwater Abstract. Give us a list of all the surface owners and the mineral owners. Can't do it. So what does that mean? We're out of luck? This is not a policy. Okay? What they will tell you over at Stillwater Abstract or at a title company in Billings is, we'll give you a list of minerals abstractors. They can actually do this. So let's say that you change this and said, go to a certified minerals abstractor and get a list. So we do that for 80,000 acres. As Bert said, it's $3.5 an acre. That's $250,000. So here we are, landowners. The standard is we got to go spend $250,000 to get a list of all the surface and minerals holders. That's kind of a non-starter. That's not a reasonable requirement. But let's say that we come up with the $250,000. Okay? We go to a minerals abstractor. The minerals abstractor has to go into Heidi's office, property by property, research the minerals holders going all the way back to the time when the minerals were severed from the surface. It's a lengthy process. So, $250,000 later, we get a list. The county has to decide that they're going to accept the work of an independent abstractor. But Heidi, you're standing out there. I know you can say that there are records missing. If you go back into the historical record for some properties, you don't have a list of all the transactions. So, what do we do in that case? Do we count those people? Do we leave them out? Do they not have rights as well? Don't know. And what about the royalties holders? Okay, sometimes minerals rights holders will sell a portion of the royalty rights to other people. Do we count them? I don't know. It's not clear from the policy. So, are you going to do what you did to us the last time? We go out, we get all the minerals holders, and you say, oops, we needed the royalties holders too. Well, this policy doesn't say that. Then we go out and we collect the signatures. And people say, okay, how does this work? One property, one signature? Well, as Bill explained, that's not the way it works. You might have one 1,500-acre ranch where it was homesteaded in 1910. Families owned it outright for 100 years. They're planning to be here for another century protecting their land. They own all the mineral rights. One property, right? Then you might go to a vacation cabin on the Stillwater. One owner, they've owned it for 3 years. Under the surface, there are 32 owners. That's 33 properties. So, when I'm trying to get this ranch owner who's been here for 100 years and say, yeah, I'd like your signature, but unfortunately, it only counts 3% as much as the vacation cabin on the Stillwater, because that's the way the county commissioners designed it. So do all that. Let's just say we could clear these hurdles. We're putting up $250,000. We're spending thousands of hours to find the mineral owners, to locate them in whatever part of the world they live. We go out, we get the signatures, we think we're at 60%, we bring them to Heidi. Heidi, here are our signatures. So what Heidi's got to do, if you look on page 3, number 5, is the validation process will begin when the clerk with the clerk and recorder counting every real property owner within the district and compare that number to the number of signatures required. So, that's not going to happen. Okay? We were dealing, when we worked on our citizen-initiated zone, with about 800 names. Heidi could not get that done. Okay? Took over a year, year and a half. She was involved with elections. She has a lot of responsibilities. She does not have the staff. She does not have the budget, as she told us in a meeting, to get this done. And in fact, the only reason that you ever validated our 60% was because you did the validation. Okay? She can't do it. How is she going to do thousands of mineral rights owners? She doesn't have the budget. She can't get it done. And you know what? This policy doesn't have any consequences for that happening. There's no timeline. Okay? We go out. We spend however long it takes to get all those mineral rights signatures. We bring in 60%. She sits on it because she can't validate. Okay? That makes no sense. No consequences, no required timeline. And she doesn't have to bring it forward unless she determines that we hit 60%. If she never determines it, she never brings it forward. So here we are, we're going to court again. Okay? That's not a policy. But this is the worst part, folks. So, let's say somebody gives Heidi the resources, she validates, she brings them forward, and she says they did it. These people were passionate enough that they went out, they raised $250,000 to get the list. They spent thousands of hours tracking down these people. They went out, they got the signatures, they got 60%. Well, where are we then? Look under action steps on page 4. Number 1. The Board of County Commissioners, at its discretion, may adopt a resolution that states their intention to create the district. So here you are, you three. These people are passionate. Paid $250,000, spent thousands of hours getting signatures. You're up there like the Roman Colosseum. No. No reason, no standards. Do not adopt this policy. Do it by talking to us.
Thank you, David.
My name is Noel Wood. I live in Nye, and also I have property in Absorption. I just want to say quickly that my wife and I both support the action of the petitioner. And I actually absolutely support.
Thank you, sir. Any further comment?
Kirsten Feldman, I have property on Fiddler Creek Road with Michael. I wanted to say that we have been trying to do what you said. I've been trying to hunt down the mineral right owners, get to them. We have the report. I'll send you a copy so you can see what it's like in the real world. But these names go back to 1940, you know, at our place. I know some of the names. They're dead. I mean, it would be impossible for me to get 60% just on my 300 acres. So for the whole area, it's doubly impossible. But just look at my report, and I'll send a letter, and you'll just see it's impossible. It's an impossible request.
Thank you.
Kirsten, what was your last name?
Feldman.
Thank you.
My name's Doxy Hatch. I own land at Cathedral Mountain Ranch in Nye. And I find myself all emotional. I didn't really expect. I've tried to understand you commissioners and how you have adopted the stance that you have. And I come from a politically conservative background that is pro-business. And I've, over time, distanced myself some from that. But I imagine that you don't want to create an environment in Stillwater County that's anti-business, that will obstruct development, that would build the tax base and provide jobs. And that makes sense to me. But we have a long history in Montana of mineral development that does a lot of damage. And when the development gets done, when they extract most of what's valuable, the companies declare bankruptcy, and the officers go off somewhere else with a lot of money. And the state has to pay to clean things up, if it ever gets cleaned up. And this initiative is not designed to prevent mineral development. It's designed to set in place conditions that would make it safe to do it. It's not a crazy policy. And I think if you could see that, these are people who love the Stillwater Valley. We just want to keep it, we don't want to prevent development, we just want to keep it from being ruined. If you wreck the Stillwater aquifer, it won't come back for hundreds of thousands of years. We can't afford to do that. So in that sense, I think we're all in the same place. None of us want that. We just want to have per well enough money put up that would actually allow the company to clean it up rather than letting them disappear. And so I think if you were to understand that that's really the intent, and we can maybe settle on what's the right numbers, that's probably negotiable. I think that's really what we all want. Thank you.
Any further comment? Okay, thank you. We will close this portion of the hearing, but the hearing itself will remain open for written comment until Tuesday, March 13th, close of business, which is 5 p.m. And we will receive those written comments via email or delivered to the Commissioner's office. So thank you all for your attendance, and we will, I guess, close and dismiss at this time. So thank you.